Well, hello, and welcome back. I am AJ O'Neill, and I'm going to be your instructor tonight for Beyond Code Live. Tonight is a Tonight is a continuation of what we were working on before, which is a blog in Markdown and Bash. And we're going to be going through some of the code that we created and grouping it into functions so that we just clean it up a little bit and make it more reusable, but not too abstract. So with that out of the way, if you have been following along, or even if you haven't, go ahead and head to gist.github.com, where you can put yourself some notes as you follow along, and then these notes, the things that you're learning, you can be putting on your own blog, which is going to grow your portfolio. And let me see, I still have to read these notes every time. Yeah, okay. So, and if it ain't, gonna have to clean this up in the edit. By the way, if you are watching live, comments are available on Twitch and YouTube, and I will try to keep an eye on those. And if you're not watching live, you can look in the description. There may be an edited version available in the Beyond Code playlist. So with that out of the way, if at any point in time while we're going through this, you have an aha moment where something clicks for you, you feel like you learned something, it was great, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and we will get started. Okay. So our build.bash script here is going to be the focus of our energies. Last time we that's not what I wanted to do. Last time we created this render page function, and that is this whole function right here. Thankfully, it is small enough that I'm going to actually expand this just a little bit. There we go. We can fit the whole function in Vue, which, by the way, I think that a general rule of thumb, no matter which language you're using, generally speaking, functions should fit within your field of view. If the function is gotten too large to fit within a single field of view, and you're not doing something like blowing up the screen size a whole bunch because you're doing a screencast or something like that, then it is probably time to break that down into more than one function, just as a little kind of rule of thumb, so to speak. So our render page function is working for our nav items right now. So let me go back to our blog. So if I click on contact or blog, both of these pages were rendered by our render page function. And what we want to do is get it so that each of our articles that we have is also rendered by our render page function. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to take this function and move it up to the top. I'm going to take this whole bit and move it up to the top, because I think there's a lot that we can do here. So let's put it right after, well, I'm going to put it right at the very top. And I'm going to create another function. One thing I like to do in Bash, once, and this is actually in the Google Style Guide, once you have more than one function in a Bash script, it's a good idea to put everything into a function and then have a function called something like main or run that kicks off everything else. So I'm going to take this cleanup process here, and I'm going to call this cleanup. I'm going to call this function, there we go. And so it's just, let's call it cleanup temp, or let's call it clear temp. That's remove temp, whatever, we'll go with that. So this is going to be clear temp. That's our function for just removing the temporary files. And then we need to have, this was up here before, so kind of maintaining what this did look like. We run clear temp. We're building our template for our big index, our articles index, and then we're rendering our contact page and our index page. So now let's take this big mess and turn this into a function as well. Let's see. We have a loop here where we're getting the list of articles and the dates of the articles, and where we're cleaning up our build files. You know, I think it would be fine if we took this cleanup build file stuff. Let's go ahead and move that up into our clear temp function, because the build files are temporary files too. So we can just get rid of all the temp files and the build files there. Move that up into that function. And then this right here is getting a formatted list of articles. And I kind of am tempted to put it in its own function by itself, but I might want to group that in with this. So here, if you remember, this big nasty blob of stuff, which let's try to make this look a little bit cleaner by just putting things on new lines, because these lines are so long that they don't fit on a single line and they wrap over, and that makes them hard to read. So let's just go ahead and we'll put some escapes so that we can have each of these items on its own line. That's good. We'll do the same with this one over here. That way we can read it a little bit easier all at once. Okay, now we save, it indents. All right, so what we were trying to do with this was get our created date and our updated date from the Git repository, which kind of got reset with our last bit of refactoring because we moved the articles folder, and so every Git item was retagged. But for future, this will continue to work the way we expect. It just reset us that one time, and then we are printing out the list of articles here. Okay, so I think we might do well to actually move this in its own function. We could call this function list articles. I think that'd be an appropriate name. And I think we could have it pass in the articles directory, because there might be more than one type of article. Maybe we have categories of articles, and we might want to be able to have different folders for different categories of articles rather than just one big giant list. I'm not saying that we should do that right now, but I'm saying that we could. So I think if we have that function receive the name of the directory it's supposed to operate on, it'll be just generic enough to serve multiple purposes. And in fact, I think with where I'm intending to take this, which this will actually become the Beyond Code blog, I think that that's something that I will probably end up doing, where we have a listing of projects, and we have a listing of live sessions, and we have a listing of core course material and stuff like that. So I'm just going to cut this out. I'm going to replace it with list articles. That should work. And then what I'm going to need to do here is, if you remember, Bash is a little bit funny in that the way that you receive arguments in Bash is not by setting them up in the function like you normally would. So we're not going to put in here something like, say, $article is what we're going to receive, but rather the function receives whatever options it was given indexed, just as if it was at the top level. And so this would be, we could say mydir. Do we have mydir? We have mydir elsewhere. That's okay. So we need to make that local. Let's make that local mydir. And we'll just take this bit right here and replace that with mydir. And let's save that. So what this is going to output, the way Bash is also unique in that it doesn't return anything. You can output strings. So that's the only return that you can get in a Bash function, as a string. So here we're printing out, for each iteration of this loop, for whatever MD files are in the given directory, we're basically creating a text list of those files with the created at and updated dates. And that's basically what's getting returned. And the way that we're accessing that is by creating a subshell, which is the $ open parens here, and then calling the function, which is the same way we would call a command or other built-in functions. So we don't, many programming languages, when you call a function, you put parens to invoke it. Bash is not that way, as we've seen before, but just to make that clear and explicit. Okay, so we're going to clear stuff out. We're going to do this setup process. We could render the nav and the index. It's not actually going to make sense to render the index yet. I moved this, all of this up towards the top, but we're going to have to move each of these things in turn above, because the index is really the last thing to get rendered, because we have to have all of the articles first, which are going to be added to the temporary index file. So let me see. Did we print that out here? No, we didn't. Good. So let me go ahead and move this. Well, I'll just continue wrapping things in functions. That's what I'll continue to do here. Let's see, my articles. It looks like what we could actually do, we don't need this variable my articles either, as it turns out. Because now that we've got it in a function, we can just call that function there, so that eliminates a little bit of code. And I think this whole bit deserves to be in a function. Maybe more than one. Let's see as we look at it. Does this have anything to do? Okay, and this is updating an index. So I think that the one thing this function should receive is the name of the index file that it's going to be updating. So let's go ahead and create a function. We'll call it, it looks like this is doing some rendering. So that render page that we created before, I think we want to use the same thing again here. So let's go look up at that function and see how similar these two are, and if it's worth, do we need to duplicate it because the code is different enough, or is it common enough that we can make it the same? So let me go back up here. Where was our render page? Okay, we've got a my dir, my article, we've got a my partial, my created, putting into a template, building out the article, removing the temporary file. So I think what's different about this that we're not doing is we're not putting anything into an index file with this, which makes sense because these are nav pages. The core nav pages are not listing of articles. They are their own pages just like an article is, and that's what we started this function as. So let's take a look and see how much we can make the same. In fact, what I might do is I might open up another terminal so I can look at these kind of side by side, top and bottom as it were. Let me see here. There we are. I go ahead and get into my project directory. And let's be on code demo. There we are in the blog directory. And I'll open this up so that we can view both at the same time. Now it's telling me you already have this file open. If you're going to edit it, it's going to mess things up. So I'm going to say open read only. That's an option it gives me, is open read only. Oh, so there we go. So I'm not going to be saving any changes in this file. I'm just going to be viewing here, and I'm going to be making edits here. Okay. So here's my render page function. And here is my what would be a render articles function. And let's just see how similar these are. And I may want to likewise make these lines fairly similar here so that I can look at them side by side. Okay, so how similar is this? Slash scripts, slash comac config, my dir, my article. Okay, that makes sense. I think that that is actually going to stay the same. We're going to have my dir and my article. Yeah. So I think that makes sense. So I would say I'm just going to make these look similar and then delete them as we go. So it would need some way to get a my dir passed in. Now, where would my dir come from? Let's see. Probably if we did a dir name on my file, that would give us my dir, but there might be something else that we'd be doing, such as passing in to the render function directly as we iterate over these articles. Let's see. I'll read my article. Yeah, I think what we would do if we wanted to create a my dir here is we would want to take the dir name of the file and then let's call this my folder. And I'm going to start putting locals in these. We use local for a variable when it's inside of a function. These have not been inside of a function, but they will be soon. So I'm going to go ahead and start placing that there. So we would want to get just the last directory in the path. And so we could use base name to do that. And we wouldn't be trimming off any file extension because we'd be working with a directory. So, oops, I didn't mean my base name, I meant my dir. So essentially what we might have is something like this. And then when we run dir name on it, we would get back something like this. And then when we ran base name on that, we would get back this. So this would be my file. This would be my folder. And this would be my dir. Just kind of give you an example of what that looks like so we can, this is one thing that I find it very useful to do is to add comments line by line on something that could potentially be unclear with an example of, with a concrete example of what might this look like. So that as we look through a progression of this, I'm familiar enough with the base name and dir name that I can look at something and I can kind of do the scripting in my head. But it takes a long time to get to that point. And so if you, and with many things, I'm not that way. And so I'll use comments just like this very frequently in code to be able to keep track of what something is supposed to look like and what I think is going on. This kind of goes a little bit to the paper programming concept of considering, well, yeah, considering what's happening at each line. Okay, so there, that's looking good. Excuse me. Okay, now we're back here. And it's too bad that I made this one read-only because I think this is the one that I'm going to be doing most of the editing to, but we'll see. I'll copy and paste over what I have to. All right, now how similar are these? Whoops. You know, if I remember correctly, there was actually a bug in this code that it would be good to go ahead and fix, which is that I believe that this is using regex mode, which is why we have to escape these brackets. But it turns out there could be something in our file that appears as though it's regex. And so there's another option we can add to SD. So just file away that as I'm going to put a little to do here. To do. Well, actually, I'll put it. I don't know where to put it. Since I'm actually editing this file, I'll go ahead and put it here. To do bug use plain text mode for SD. That way, because we don't want anything in our article to be interpreted as special text. We want it to be interpreted only as plain text. So I don't remember what that flag is off the top of my head, and that's not the purpose of going through this right now, but I am reminded of it. Okay, so now these two things pretty much look identical. So yeah, I feel like this is a really good candidate for replacing this with that function. The one thing that's different, let's see, is this, yeah. The one thing that's different between the two is the way our RMRF is working. And I think we might be able to just ignore that for a little bit. Let me see if it will allow me to write this file. Okay, yeah, it will. So I'll use :w bang and it will allow me to write the file. And I'll open up this other copy read only. Oh, load file. Yes. Let's load the file. Cool. All right. So based on that, I'm actually going to make this bigger again. And I'm going to say render page. And what does our render page? Let me go look for where we're using render page again. Render page gives it a directory and gives it a name. So it looks like the directory that we could give it would be this mydir. So we need to put that in quotes. And then the name of the article that we want to give it, what would that be? I think it would be my article right here. Yeah, that looks right. Now I'm wondering, let's go back up and look at the render page function, because I'm trying to remember here, did we do anything special with mydir? Okay, and list articles, is that doing anything special with mydir? I don't think it is. So I actually think we don't need to do my folder. I think we can just do mydir right here, and it would need, it should actually be the full path. And so I can get rid of that version, and that's good enough. And I put that comment in the right place. So my article here, well, this was actually good to have up there. Yeah, let's go like that. I feel like that tells the story a little better than separating the comments out. Okay, and does render page print an adding something? Let's go back up and see. Render page. It does not, but it probably could. That'd probably be an alright thing to do. So I'm just kind of going back and forth, comparing differences between the two. Sometimes it's nice to be able to have two copies of the file open. Let's see. Let's go ahead and move that all the way up here into the render page function. And then let's go back down. And this part we already confirmed is the same. This part has a bug we need to fix. I think I'll take the liberty of fixing that momentarily. And what was the temp HTML about? Is there any place where we have? Okay, render page. Maybe we'll save the cleanup of the temp files for later. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to go find my other one just by, I was searching for it, and so I hit N, so I found the other one. I'm just gonna comment both of these out because I think we could do the cleanup afterwards. I think if we do the cleanup during, there might be some unintended side effects. Okay, let me see what else can I delete now that I've got that render page function in there. I know I need to move this to do. So let's move that to do. And it looks like this is good. This is a lot smaller now. I'm also going to move this here. Make this a little more readable. There we are. And let's shorten this comment just a touch so that it stays on one line. Instead of saying from, we'll say up. There we go. Now it fits. Love it. Okay. And we didn't change much. I still have that comment in my copy buffer. I'm going to go paste that. And then I'm going to take a second to actually fix that problem. So we haven't demonstrated this problem, but essentially, if the content, and I'll go ahead and open this up. Let's go into articles here. And let's try intro to Bash Shell. I don't think that we actually had anything in here that was substantial enough that it had special characters. Oh, this might have been. Yeah, this has backticks in it. Those are special characters. If we have a $, well, they're not special regex characters, but they are special characters. But if we had something like a $, so let's say we put in $10 here, that the $, is a special regular expression character. So if we were to render this using regular expressions, it wouldn't output 10, or it wouldn't output, it would cause it to mess up. It's not necessarily what it would or wouldn't do, but we could get unexpected behavior if we had special characters like a caret or certain backslashes. We don't want our article to be interpreted in any way as a script or as instruction. And SD, by default, uses regex. So let's take a look at the help here. String mode, -s. Treat expressions as non-regular expression strings. So treat them as raw strings, basically. That's what we need to do. So let me go back in here. And I'm going to say edit anyway. There we go. Fix that bug. Awesome. So now I can get rid of this escaping because we don't need it anymore. And now I don't have to be afraid of there potentially being content in the article being interpreted as a regular expression and it not rendering the way that I expect and want it to. All right. So that's looking pretty good. And this is looking pretty good. We do want to put this in a function. I'd put this whole thing in a function called render articles. And let's take this whole thing. And typically we want to move functions because functions they answer the question of when. When I want to do something, what will it do? When I want to render articles, what will it do? And so we want to have all of our functions up above because they don't do anything until the condition is met to do them. So here, when I call clear temp, only then does the function run. When I call render page, only then does the function run, so on and so forth. So we want to take this render articles, and this definitely needs to be done before we render the index. And I don't think that we're having it receive everything that it needs to receive. Let me look at list articles again. Yeah, list articles is supposed to take a directory. So this was incorrect. So this should have, for example, articles. And then I indented it and it ruined all of this. Let's see if I can just there we go. Okay. So I've got my function. It should take also a directory. And then we should be passing that directory along as we go. So now we're going to pass that directory along to the list articles function. And this should be a local. We're going to have to go back and make sure all of our variables are locals. Make that a local. Make this a local. Those are locals. Let's just go back and check and see. Okay, it looks like all of those have been made local. Oh, and I like to have our arguments declared before anything else happens. So that's good now. Okay. This is still a little bit long, but it's because there's a lot of comments explaining what's going on, so I think that's acceptable. Now, does this need to take anything other than a directory name? Let me go down to the bottom here. Render articles. Articles. I don't think that it does. But what we do need to do, no, it does. It does. It absolutely does. Because what we need to do is, and we might need to make yet one more function. We need to tell it what index it should be putting these things in. So I'm just going to put in here, I think that is sufficient. Yeah. So we're going to tell it what are we rendering. We're going to render this whole directory ./articles. And where are we rendering it to? We're going to render it to a file that is /temp index.md. What we might want to do is might want to go a step further. Let's see, because we're going to add that. Yeah, let's go a step further. We'll move this file into there as well. Yeah, I think we will. So I'm going to get rid of that. We'll render articles. Well, no, I'm going to leave it there for now. The reason I'm going to leave it there is I don't want to be too hasty about deciding where it should go. I think we need to learn a little bit first. And I've made a significant number of changes, so it's probably a really good time to test this to make sure that it's still working, that I didn't break anything. So basically, I found code that was the same. I moved it around a little bit. We shouldn't have changed the functionality other than that one bug fix. I think I'm ready to test this. Oh, wait. I still need to make sure that this is received. Excuse me. Oh, this is received over here. So we've got my dir, and then we also need my index. So this would be the first thing that it receives, the second thing that it receives, and let's separate the arguments from the other stuff. And then again, I don't know that I want to nest this too deeply, but we could just go like that there. I don't really like nesting it that way. But in the way that we've refactored this, it's no longer strictly necessary to have the myArticles variable because it only gets used once anyway. But just for the sake of readability, I'm going to leave that out. And what was that thing I was going to check on? Oh, right. So once we've received whatever my index is, now I need to find out where are the other places where index was being used. It was right here. Looks like this was the only place. And so we're going to take this listing of articles and we're going to put it into whatever the index is. And this is something, there are so many variables here, this really deserves a comment. So this is going to look like, I don't remember what the exact format was actually. Let me go back. Okay, year, month, day. Okay, so this is going to look like year, month, day, and then a title, and then a path to an article. Oh, actually, one thing that we didn't do that we should have done is we need to have the article path in here. Let's see. So I think that's my dir needs to go in there. It's a good thing I went through this, otherwise that could have slowed us down a bit. Okay, so this actually needs to have my dir. So for example, articles, and then how domains work.html. See, and then edited 2021-04-12 with a new line. Okay, so this comment right above, that's what each line will look like. Cool. Just got to remember to go back if we ever update this function or this code, update the comment as well so we keep it in sync. Alrighty. Well, now I think that we're ready to test this. I'm going to go back up to the top and just go through and see if there's anything else that deserves that kind of comment where there's too many pieces going on to really be able to easily look at it and tell what that one line, just looking at one line at a time. Like I can tell my partial is going to expand out to whatever the contents, the rendered contents of the markdown file were. I get that. And, you know, these other ones, I get that. I can look at them one line at a time. I can understand what they do. Now this one, this is getting a little hairy. Oh, interesting. Huh. I had not realized that if you use a pipe, you don't need to escape. Learn something new every day. Thank goodness. So I actually installed some bash tools for the purpose of, well, really making them available to you. It's on webinstall.dev/, there's two of them. Shell check is one, and I think both of these are listed on the homepage as well. There's shell check and FMT format, sh format. And I put on the integrations as well with Vim. So if you go to webinstall.dev/vim-essentials, when you install that, it will give you those commands, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I might still need to finish up one of the pull requests on it, but excuse me. I did this so that we all would have a consistent set of tools we're working with, and so that you have a little bit more help of how to format things, and if you type something wrong, getting feedback more quickly and clearly that something was wrong. And so I am actually learning things from those tools because I was not using them before, even though I should have been. I wish I'd been using them years ago. It would have saved me so much time and have taught me so much. But alas, I was the wrong kind of lazy. Not the efficient kind, but the bad kind. Anyway. And then this, again, the get stuff, this deserves a comment because I will never remember what this actually means. I think %AD means author date in the format, and I believe that it is like this, but then there's kind of more that goes to it that we're cutting off. And then this is the same. So I might just put this up above. Because I would never, that's just one of those things. I don't even think that a person who considers themselves a Git expert would necessarily know what, they'd have to go look this stuff up. There's lots of things I consider myself an expert in that I have to go look up every time. Let's see. The times are just infrequent, typically. Are there any more areas where I feel like it really deserves a comment? I think this is pretty clean now. I mean, obviously there's some advanced stuff in here, but I think it's pretty clean, and I think we're ready to test this. So let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to run bash. Oops, do we have, I think we have scripts local deploy. And I'm going to do something dangerous. I'm going to add -- delete to this temporarily, so that if anything goes wrong, I'm going to know because the file is actually missing. So let's see how this works out. Refresh. Looks good. Contact is still there. Oh, good thing I had delete on there. So I think what's happening is the articles are not being rendered into the correct directory. So let's go back here. Yep, edit anyway. And let's go, I think wherever the articles are going into a build is where the problem is. So it might be in render page. Yeah, there's my article. .html. And what we need to do is potentially put my dir as the prefix to it. So how might we want to do that? I think what we ought to do is have a third optional parameter that this function receives that is the build directory. So let me go back to down where it's used. Maybe it doesn't need to be optional even. So here, where are we rendering the page? Well, the nav, it kind of makes sense to render it at the top level. But for the articles, we don't necessarily want to render them at the top level. We want to render them from whatever directory they came from. Now, another thing that we might want to do, which I think is really could be useful and could have solved the problem we had with losing our dates because of the way changing where files are in a directory in the Git database changes what their dates are perceived to be, is just have a third, and then here, now we can do the reverse. We've got the concrete examples. It would be good to document what this is not so concretely, or rather at a high level. And this comment probably deserves to go up with the function itself. But let's call this source directory, index file, and then destination directory. So in this case, I want that to go into articles. But really, I want the nav just to go at the top level. So we need to have our render articles pass this down a level and our render page accept it. So let's first go to our render articles. Let's go my destdir. Let's make that number 3, and we've already changed it. But let's go ahead, let me go ahead and take these comments and bring them back up here. Or, not these comments, but there. So now we've got some documentation for this and some concrete examples of what it looks like. That's good. And then we need to change this one as well. Do we need to change, is it this one? No, we don't need to change this one. It is the next one up, the render page. We need to change that also. So let's go ahead and update this comment. Source directory, and this is not an index file, but rather a, no, it isn't. Let's see. Yeah, we'll call that a source file, and then we'll have a destination directory perhaps. If that, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's actually call this prefixter. I like the term prefixter better for what this is going to be. Okay, so we're going to get something like source directory, and then the article name might be something like, and we're going to have a special case for index, actually. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's call the articles, what's an example of an article? Would be how domains work. I think because it's just the name of the article, right? Yeah, it's just the name. And then a prefix dir. We might want that to be the same as whatever the my_dir was. So let's go ahead and add my prefix and change that to number 3. And then where we're doing output here for the build, we want to put my prefix / and if my prefix is dot, then that just references the current directory, so it basically goes away. We won't have a directory called dot. It'll just be, it'll collapse to just build / my article. All right. So I think that was the only place that we needed that, and I want to rename destdir to prefixdir down here as well. It's probably another. I mean, really what it is the URL path. Okay, I'm going to change it one more time. I'm going to call it URL prefix. It's good to have good names if we can think of them. So URL prefix. There we go. I feel best about that. Okay. And then I'll call this my prefix instead of destdir. I'll find destdir. Oh, it wasn't actually being used. I think because we just need to pass it in here. There we are. Okay, now we're pretty much done. If this is tested and working, oh, we have an unbound variable. How unfortunate. And also, I'm going to go ahead and close this out since I'm not using it anymore. So now we're just using the one terminal here. Okay, so somewhere where I called render page, I did not pass it a prefix. Oh, it was right here. Let's see, what should that be? Oh, excuse me. Bless me, as it were. Okay, list articles. Yeah, we didn't need to pass the prefix to the list articles. We need to pass it to render page, which is right here. Okay, is there any other place? I'm just searching forward. I think that's it. Nope. Oh, I see what we need to do. It says no such file or directory. Well, it's supposed to create this file. What's going on here? The problem would be that it's trying to create a file inside of a directory that doesn't exist. So the no such file or directory actually refers to the /articles, not to the file that it's trying to create. That one will trip you up sometimes. So let me go back to where we were doing using my prefix. Let me find those places. Is it right here? Was there anywhere else? Okay, so just right here. So what we're going to need to do is do a make dir and make sure that the prefix exists. And when we use -p, it'll mean that it won't cause an error if it already exists. So there we are. That should be good. Okay, let's try this one more time. No, that's looking good. I like the look of that. And there we are. Wonderful. So now the only thing that there's two things that I want to change here. One is I would like it to kind of explore what it would be like to have a secondary listing. So we have, say, blog and then projects. Let's go ahead and create a projects directory. So we're going to create projects, and in projects I'm going to have blog.sh. We've created a blog together. Here are the live sessions to do. Oh, and we need to have a title for this as well. Project 1, a blog, a markdown blog, written in Bash. Oops. What is it upset about? What did I do? Oh, I did .sh instead of .md. Silly me. Let's move this. All right, there we go. That's as expected. Okay, so now we've got a projects folder, and we want to treat it just the same way as the articles folder. So let's update the build script here. And let's find where we had our articles folder. And here's the funny thing, is that we're going to need to have another nav item, but it's going to need to be just like the index, but it's going to need to be projects, because the index is actually our blog. And in fact, we could have a completely different index page. But that's okay. We'll be able to make those changes later. Once you see how to do this, you should be able to follow the same process if you wanted to for what we're going to do with projects, and then rename index to blog, and then have a different index file that has other content, like maybe just contact information, not a listing of articles. So in any case, we're going to put that there. We need to make sure that we have the nav very similar. So I'm going to go into nav. I'm going to copy what's an index. Oh, Beyond Code blog. Not much there. Let's copy projects. Beyond Code projects. There we are. Fair enough. I'm going to go back into build here. And we're going to do a render articles now on projects as well. And this one. And now as we do more, we're going to start to notice some common patterns, and we might start to figure out where these lines should actually go, because to me they don't feel right to be here. They work here, but I do feel like they should be in the render articles function, and this kind of seems to point to that. The one issue being that we would need to also move, let's see, let me move the the render nav here, we would need to also move, so this is non-index navigation. Let's call this plain non-index navigation. We would also need to move the render page of the index, not meaning the file named index, but by index I mean the listing of the articles. We would need to move that as well. So basically what this starts to feel like to me is that it should be something like this. And if we just move this cat and this render page inside of render articles, it will pretty much be the right thing. We would need one more thing, which is this would change to nav index. And then we'd have to use maybe base name to determine what the temporary file name should be. So I think I'll do that too in a minute, but there's the two things I want to accomplish are so that we can have a projects listing. And I actually really don't like when there's .html files is the name of the URL. I prefer it when it's a directory. So I want to change that too, and that's going to require a special case for handling index. So we'll have to put another if in there. Let me go ahead and do this. All right, so this looks good. And again, I want to reiterate, the reason that I'm having this projects listed twice is because we could have left the old directory called source, and then the directory that it outputs to, we could have made articles. So we don't have to have the directory where we're reading files from and the directory where we're writing files to be of the exact same name. That's why I'm listing that there twice. Because for my own purposes, I probably will use that as a feature sometimes. Okay, so this looks good now. We're copying the process that we're doing for index. We're just renaming it for projects. And I think that's going to work all on its own. So let's go ahead and give that a try. And the one thing that we don't have here, oh, there's a couple of issues potentially. Because of the way that our get command is structured to read the dates and times of articles from the database, we'll get an error when something's not actually committed to the database. So I'm going to have to take this nav and this projects, and I'm going to have to commit them both to the database. So there we go. Now, if I run that deploy, okay, there was still an error. Let's see what it was. Blog MD. Articles, blog MD. Okay, so there must be somewhere where we referenced articles and we didn't switch it over. So let's search through here for articles. I'm going to start up at the top. Let me go to the top and just look for articles. Do we have articles hard-coded anywhere? Oh, we do, right here. So this one probably needs to be, this is the source directory. So this one would be mydir. It would be that articles. Let me continue to search through here, see if we have anywhere else where it's hard-coded. Nope, I don't think so. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a look. No errors. Okay, so now we just need to add another section to our header here. That might go, we'll just go into nav. No, not into nav. Where do we need to go for this one? I think this is the page template. Yeah, we need to go in here and we need to add another section in the nav. So we have blog. Let's add projects. There we are. Run that again. No errors. Good. Okay. Now we have a nav item for projects. And indeed, it gives us another listing. So we have our main blog listing, and now we have our projects listing. Sweet. So with 2 more changes, which I probably should fit into another episode, but I want to go ahead and just finish this out tonight. Also, I probably won't be streaming on Saturdays anymore. I'll probably just keep it to Monday through Friday. And we won't take on another big project like this blog for a while. I'm going to go do more of those videos like we had for the introduction to Markdown and HTML, etc. But I did want to finish this out because what this is going to be is what I'm suggesting you use as your first blog. So you'll be able to clone this repository, and we'll go through that, and then you'll be able to set it up. Oh, there is one more thing we'll do with this, actually, that will be another video, which is the automated deployment, so that you can do it from GitHub and use the GitHub editor. But that, I think we'll save that for later. Anyway. Hey, Will. Thanks. I appreciate your kind words. I had somebody say, love you guys on JavaScript Jabber in the chat there. Don't know how long ago that was. I haven't been keeping a good eye on it. Okay, so last changes that we want to make. We've got that in place. So I want to be able to get rid of the .html. So, and let me go back and show what this is. I just don't like this. It's just an aesthetic that I personally don't care for. So /projects/blog.html. I want it to be /projects/blog. And so there's going to be a number of places where we need to update this. Let's start with where we just were, back in the template. Let's go ahead and change it here. And let's see if there's any other places. Where do we have a .html? Nowhere. Okay, good. Nowhere else. And then we're going to need to change everywhere we build it out. So here's .html, adding article.html. Let's do, this is just we're printing out to the screen, but this is what we actually want to add. So there's template.html. Everything's well and good until it actually goes out to build. I want it to be that, and that means that now my article name is going to be a directory. So we need to make sure that we create that directory. Okay. And let's look for any other places where we have .html. Okay, right here. So we can just get rid of that. Okay, where else? Okay, we're going to go ahead and do this, but this is going to cause a problem. I'll go ahead and let it happen so we can demonstrate. So now, our problem is that our index is now under a folder called index, which is not what we want. So we want to have an exception for the very special case of index. So I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to go down to the bottom where we have our main code, and I'm going to, right here, we have this very special case. And the question is, what do we do about it? Because we're going to render all of the articles, and then we're going to render the page. But the page has a file name of index, but we want its output name to not be index. Now what we could do is we could create yet another parameter to this so that we tell it what the output name is. And then in most cases it would be the same. So we would have projects and projects. That would be a valid way to do it, I think. But it would also be kind of difficult to judge. Well, no, it wouldn't. But I think that it is appropriate in this particular case that if the name of the thing is index, that we simply don't create a directory of that name. I think that would be appropriate. So I'm going to go to the render page function, and we're going to add a little if. So we can put it right here. If index is equal to my article, then else phi. So this is how we do an if-else block in Bash. There we go. So we're changing what we print out. And then we need to go find here. So if the name of the article is index, then what we can do is we can move it up one level. We could do this either way, but yeah, we'll just go like this. There we go. So now both what we're printing out is correct and where we're putting the file is correct. We could maybe do this a little bit better though, because I personally, I don't like the idea of having two branching statements, meaning if blocks, in different locations. So what I'd prefer to do is make another variable for the last part of the path, although that could get complex because then we'd have to put a base name around this. I guess that's not so bad. So we could have a base name around this bit right here. And instead of my article, we could call it my page. And then we could get rid of all of these, and they could just be my page. Sorry, I'm thinking a little bit ahead in my head from where we're actually. I probably should take a step back, because sometimes I do this where I already kind of have the code in my head of, you know, it's going up here, it's going down there, just from years of doing it. And so I start in a different place, and then I work backwards. So let me stop what I'm doing and show you why I'm doing it first. That's what I should be doing. So I'm going to go up here to the top, and we're going to make another variable. And this is going to be local my page. And my page is going to be the article index. And then only if index is the name of my article, then I'm going to change my page. And I'm not sure if we need to use local there or not. We'll find out, because either we'll get an error or we won't. Oh, let me see what we're doing there. And this is the output path, yeah. So my page would make sense right here. Then I don't have to have two print statements, because I'm just cleaning up a variable. All right, so my page in this case would just be index.html. Great, that will work. And then I swapped out my page down here, and I can do the same thing down. Well, I don't need to have that at all. So now I don't need this. So I feel like that code's a little bit simpler. All right, let's see if it works. The one thing I'm not sure about is if I need to put local in front of this every time I use it or not. I don't think that I do. but I myself personally don't know. Okay, adding how domains work. Let's look for this again. Not a directory. Uh-oh, we did something wrong. I should have done a git add when everything was working. Now I've got it in a non-working state. It's really good to make progress commits, and I haven't been demonstrating that as we've been going along. And now it just bit me in the butt. So let's see. What is the problem? mkdir, not a directory. mkdir. Oh, sorry, this needed to be dir name, not base name. That was my mistake. Because we want to get the directory. So basically, if my page includes a path, or we want to get whatever path my page may include. Actually, I don't think my page is the right name for this. I'm going to go back and rename this to my path, because that's what it is. It's the URL path. Yeah, that's a better name for that, for sure. Okay, here we are. Yeah, so we take the dir name of my path, which might include a directory or not. Here we go. Let's render this all again. Okay, I think this is going to be it. Oh, what do we get this time? Okay, good. So now the index directory does not exist. We need a 404 page. I have to get around to that at some point. All right, so I've got my blog. I've got my projects. I've got my contact. I can go to a project and, ooh. Oh, that doesn't quite work. Okay, so we've got projects blog. That doesn't, something's wrong there. Something's very wrong there. So I think what's happening, I think I know what's happening, is we've got a mix of relative and absolute paths, or relative paths where the paths should be absolute. So I think the best way to handle this, let me explain that real quick. Let me go back. So if I go up to the top level here, that's good. If I click on blog, that's good. If I click on projects, I'm now down a level in projects. And if I click on projects again, I'm still in projects. That's good. If I click on contact, I'm up in contact. Okay. But when I click on this link, I believe that this link has a relative path. So we could do one of two things to fix this. Yeah. So as a relative path to projects blog. So we could do one of two things to fix this. We can make the path absolute, or we cannot put the reference to the directory when we're down inside. And both of these have pluses and minuses. Let me rephrase that. Since we're already in the projects folder, the link should not reference the projects folder again. But because I think in our site we may have places where we might want to change the level that a directory is at, we might want to be down a level or up a level, I'm going to go with the choice of making everything an absolute path, which has some negative consequences. It means that we could not take this site and just relocate it one level down or one level up. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, I don't think that this is kind of a top level site. So, and what I mean by that is when you start messing around with relative versus absolute directory paths in a URL, let's say that I wanted to put this whole site under a folder. Let's say I wanted to have 10 sites. Let's say that this was the Beyond Code site, and this is Kool-Aid J86 site inside of that. Well, if I have absolute references when I build this, what's going to happen is everything is going to reference the Beyond Code main site. if I have relative references, then it would be referencing the Coolage86 site. So that's kind of a pro and a con. You can actually, however, we could take a hybrid approach here. Because it turns out there's this very not well-known feature, I think it's called base URL, where you can actually specify that you can use absolute paths on a page, but the absolute paths are relative to a base URL. I won't go into that right now, but let's put a pin in that for later. Comment if you would like me to go into that at some point. Yeah, I think the simplest solution for right now is going to be, let's find where we have my page. I'm gonna make a comment for both possible solutions, and we'll just pick one. So one is that we don't need to put my dir. So this is a possible solution. So we don't put my dir. That would work. What is my dir anyway here? Let's go back up and see how we're defining that. My dir, render articles. My prefix. That should have been my prefix. So that was actually good. Either way, that needed to change because that would have been a bug at some point. So we could do this, and that would be a relative link, or we could do my prefix, but when we set the prefix to be absolute. All right, now if I run this, I believe it's going to work, and we're at a good point to just stop and save and be good. Okay. We don't want to do that. All right, I can go to blog, I can go to projects, I can go to contacts. In projects, I can go to an article. Excellent. Oh, I think I moved the wrong thing here. Let me take a look at this. Was that correct? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, cool. All right, well, that I think is everything that I was hoping to accomplish with this blog project. There's other things that we could do to make it better, but I think this is a good stopping point for you to be able to have a homepage and have a blog, have something that looks decent, and that we can work from. In the future, we'll probably come back to this and do a couple of other things. For example, at some point we need to talk about adding payments to a web application, and we could put something up for sale on the blog, maybe stickers or something. But we'll find some other ways. Adding comments, that's the obvious one. Duh. Want to have a way to add comments to a blog. But for right now, we're at a good spot. We're going to close this chapter on the Markdown blog in Bash. Okay? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and commit this, and it will also become available on github.com/beyondcodebootcamp. There should be a repository that's called Beyond Blog. I will go check on that right now. But this code will get there fairly soon. Yeah, Beyond Blog Template. That's what it's called. So Beyond Code Bootcamp, Beyond Blog Template. You can click Use this template, and then you'll be able to use this blog that we've created together. Although there are a few things that are different because what I'm working on hasn't been committed yet here, obviously. So I'll update that, and I might do one more. The last episode might be how do you use this as a whole without writing it yourself and following along with this whole tutorial. Anyway, with all of that, I really hope that this was useful for you, that it was useful to kind of see an approach to how to refactor something. We talked about comments. We talked about not being too hasty in abstracting. So I hope that this provides you with some value, even though I realize that there's a lot of stuff that as a newer developer, you're not going to understand about Bash, and that's fine. The purpose of this project was, well, what we did to put something together in a scripting language, and we did that. So if you appreciated this, please give it a like. Stay tuned. We're going to be going back to some more basic style programming topics this upcoming week. So if you'd like that, subscribe to the live channel. Also subscribe to the Beyond Code Bootcamp channel, both in the description. And please comment with any of your questions, suggestions, comments. I would love to hear how you think you might be able to use this, or what you might like to see improved upon it for it to be something you really would think is a great, albeit super simplistic, blog tool. All right. So thanks for joining in, especially if you were in for this whole session. I hope, again, I just hope it's been valuable for you, and you have yourself a wonderful night. Adios.